In that kingdom, there was one rule so strange that even the oldest people in the village still whispered about it like it had been spoken by a spirit and not a man. The princess was never allowed to touch the ground. Not for one step. Not for one breath. Not by mistake. Not even inside her own father's palace. If she moved through the courtyard, servants rushed ahead of her, unrolling thick carpets so her feet would never meet the bare earth. If she crossed a hallway, soft animal skins were laid down one after another like stepping stones. And if she needed to leave the palace walls, 4 strong men lifted her high in a carved chair and carried her above the dusty road while guards shouted at everyone to stay back. Nobody was allowed to question it. Because King Django had made the punishment clear. If anyone, even by accident, allowed Princess Adora's bare feet to touch the earth, that person would disappear into the dungeon and never return. In the beginning, the people obeyed because kings are obeyed. But after some time, obedience turned into fear, and fear turned into rumors. Some said the girl was cursed. Some said the ground itself hated her. Some said the king had been told by a diviner that the princess would die the moment she touched the soil. And because nobody knew the truth grew larger in the dark. But the strangest thing was not the rule. The strangest thing was what the kingdom had become while that rule was being protected. The village below the palace was dying. The rains had stopped many months earlier. The river that once ran through Tola had shrunk into a scar of pale sand. The farms cracked open under the heat. Goats fell where they stood. Mothers pressed empty calabashes to the lips of thirsty children with nothing inside them but hope. Even the wind felt dry, as if it had forgotten how to carry life. Yet somehow, up on the hill, the palace still had water. Its stone walls gleamed in the sun. Its gardens, though fading, still held more green than anything left in the village. Inside those walls was a deep royal well, and everyone knew it. Everyone knew because guards carried water jars across the courtyard while children below the hill licked dryness from their lips and washed. No one said it loudly, but the thought lived in every home. How could a king save water for one girl while the whole kingdom withered? At the far edge of Tola lived a boy named Kobe. He was only 8, but life had already taken from him what it takes from some people in 50 years. His parents were gone, taken by a sickness that had swept through the village 2 rainy seasons earlier. Since then, Kobe had cared for his little sister Nola the way a grown man would, except he was not a grown man. He was just a boy with tired hands, sharp eyes, and a heart too young to carry so much. Every morning he searched for work. Every evening he returned with whatever he could find. A little cassava. Some dry grain. A handful of firewood to trade. And on the worst days, nothing at all. Nola never complained. That was what broke his heart the most. She was small, all knees and elbows, with a voice that had become softer as the drought deepened. Sometimes she would sit beside him near the roadside and watch the royal procession pass, her chin resting on her knees. That was how Kobe first began to notice the princess. She was always dressed in bright cloth that caught the sunlight. Beads shone in her hair. Gold flashed at her wrist. To anyone passing quickly, she looked like a child who had everything. But Kobe did not look quickly. He noticed the way Adora held onto the sides of her chair when the men carried her. He noticed how she stared at the ground below as if it were something she had been promised all her life and never allowed to touch. He noticed that when other children ran barefoot through the dust, laughing and shouting, her face did not show pride. It showed longing. One afternoon, Nola tugged at his arm and asked, "Why does that girl never walk?" Kobe kept watching the princess as the servants unrolled another carpet in front of her. "I don't know," he said. But the truth was, he wanted to know. Because there was something wrong in the way the palace watched her. Not protected. Afraid. The fear around Princess Adora did not look like love made careful. It looked like love made desperate. That same week, Kobe found work in the palace kitchens. The head cook, an old woman named Binta, needed someone small enough to squeeze between the giant black pots and strong enough to scrub them clean. Kobe lied about his age and said he could walk like 2 boys. Binta looked at his face for a long moment, then at the bones in his wrist, and she must have understood more than he said, because she nodded and let him in. The palace was another world. It smelled of roasted meat, oil, flowers, and water. Real water. Enough to wash stone floors. Enough to rinse cloth twice. Enough to spill by accident. Kobe tried not to stare. He scrubbed pots until his shoulders ached. He carried wood. He washed the thick skins laid down for the princess's footsteps. And every day, he hid a few scraps of food to carry home to Nola inside his shirt. But as he walked, he washed. He watched the servants sweep away every pebble from the princess's path. He watched guards inspect carpets before she crossed them. He watched everyone flinch if her wooden shoes came even a little too close to the edge of bare stone. The whole palace moved as if one mistake could destroy them all. Then one afternoon, the mistake almost happened. Kobe was crossing the courtyard with folded skins stacked in his arms when he saw Princess Adora sitting beneath a carved shade canopy. A servant was rolling out a fresh carpet before her. His hands were shaking. Whether from age, fear, or exhaustion, Kobe could not tell. The carpet slipped. It rolled crooked across the courtyard and stopped short. Between the princess and the carpet was a patch of uncovered earth. Nothing moved. The birds seemed to stop singing. The guards froze. Even the air felt tight. Adora rose slowly from her seat. Her face changed. Not with fear. With wonder. She looked at that patch of bare earth the way a thirsty person looks at water. And then, very slightly, she lifted one foot. Before it could come down, a voice split the courtyard like thunder. Stop! King Django came rushing across the stone, his face wild, his robes dragging behind him. He grabbed Adora so hard that she nearly lost her balance, then spun on the servant with a look so full of terror it did not even resemble anger anymore. Take him away, the king shouted. The servant fell to his knees at once. He begged. He wept. He called it an accident. It made no difference. The guards dragged him screaming across the courtyard while every servant stood with lowered eyes, too afraid even to breathe loudly. Kobe stood frozen behind a pillar, his paws hammering. It was only dirt. Just earth. Just ground. The same ground every child in Tola slept on, walked on, played on. So why had the king looked like death itself had opened at his daughter's feet? Kobe kept asking himself that all through the evening. And the next morning, he got closer to the answer than anyone in the village ever had. Because Princess Adora spoke to him. And the first thing she asked was not about the palace, or the king, or his name. She asked him what the ground felt like. Kobe did not answer her immediately. For a moment, he just stared at the princess, unsure if this was some kind of test. The window was high above the courtyard, and he stood on a narrow wooden ladder, one hand gripping the frame, the other holding a damp cloth. The morning light fell across her face, and up close, she did not look like a princess at all. She looked like a child who had been kept away from something important her entire life. What does it feel like? Adora asked again, softer this time, as if she was afraid the question itself might be forbidden. Kobe swallowed. It depends, he said carefully. When it is dry, it is hard. It cracks. It feels rough under your feet. But when the rain comes, he paused, picturing it, it becomes soft. It moves between your toes. It smells alive. Adora closed her eyes. She leaned her forehead gently against the window frame as if she could feel it through the air. My father says it is dangerous, she whispered. He says the earth is full of sharp things. That it will hurt me. Kobe frowned without meaning to. The earth does not hurt people, he said quietly. Not like that. Adora opened her eyes again and looked at him. There was something in her expression now. Not just curiosity. Doubt. But he would not lie to me, she said, almost to herself. Kobe hesitated. This was a princess. This was the king's daughter. And yet, in that moment, she sounded like Nola when she asked questions about things she did not understand. My sister is sick, Kobe said instead. He did not know why he said it. The words just came. Adora's attention shifted immediately. Sick, she asked. From what? From thirst, Kobe replied. The word hung between them. Adora blinked slowly. But, there is water, she said, confused. There are wells. The servants bring water every day. Kobe shook his head. Not in the village, he said. The river is gone. The ground is dry. He stopped himself, but the truth was already there, people are dying. Adora stepped back from the window. It was a small step, but it changed something in her face. The softness there began to tighten into something sharper. I did not know, she said. Kobe believed her. That was the part that unsettled him the most. She truly did not know. Before he could say anything else, voices echoed from down the hallway. Heavy footsteps. Guards. Adora straightened quickly. You should go, she whispered. Kobe climbed down the ladder without another word. But as his feet touched the stone below, one thought would not leave him. The princess lived above everything. Above the ground. Above the truth. Above the suffering. And someone had put her there on purpose. That same day, the elders of Tola came to the palace gates. Kobe saw them from the kitchen courtyard. They were old men, bent by years and heat, holding empty bowls in their hands. Their steps were slow, but their faces carried something heavier than age. Desperation. The guards tried to turn them away, but the elders refused to move. They knelt in the dust instead, right there before the iron gates, their bows lifted like offerings. Let us speak to the king, the oldest among them said. His voice was dry, but it did not shake. We have nothing left to give but words. Let us give those. Word reached inside. After a long time, King Jengo appeared on the high balcony overlooking the gates. He did not come down. He stood above them, looking down, as though distance alone could protect him from what they were about to say. Great king, the elders began, bowing his head, our children cannot eat dust. Our animals are gone. The river has left us. We ask only for water. Open your well. Share what you have, and we will survive. The other elders lowered their heads. The bows remained raised. For a moment, the king said nothing. Then his hands gripped the stone railing so tightly that the muscles in his arms stood out. If I open the well, he said, his voice loud and controlled, it will empty. And when it empties, none of us will survive. Not you. Not me. Not my daughter. A murmur passed through the men below. Then we would die anyway, another elder said, his voice breaking. But we would die knowing our king tried to save us. The king's face hardened. My duty is to protect what must be protected, he replied. Then he turned his back and walked inside. The gates did not open. The elders remained kneeling for a long time before they slowly lowered their bows and stood up. No one cried out. No one protested. They simply walked away. Kobe watched the entire thing from the shadows. Something inside him shifted. Until that moment, he had thought the king was cruel. But now, something felt different. The king had not looked cruel. He had looked afraid. That night, Kobe could not sleep. Nola lay beside him, her breathing shallow, her lips dry. He dipped the cloth in the last drops of water he had managed to save and pressed it gently to her forehead. She did not wake. Kobe sat there in the darkness, listening to the silence of the village. No animals. No laughter. No movement. Just waiting. He thought about the princess's question. What does the ground feel like? He thought about the king's fear. If I open the well, none of us will survive. And then, slowly, a thought began to form. Not clear. Not complete. But dangerous. What if the princess was not just being protected? What if she was the reason? The idea made his chest tighten. It sounded impossible. And yet, nothing about this kingdom made sense anymore. Kobe stood up quietly. He looked at Nola one last time. Then he stepped outside. The moon hung low in the sky, pale and distant. The path to the palace was empty. No guards. No voices. Just shadows. He began to walk. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of the climb, but because of what he might find. He did not know exactly where he was going. But he knew this much. The answers were inside that palace. And if he did not find them soon, Nola would not survive long enough to hear them. By the time Kobe reached the palace walls, the night had deepened into something colder. The guards at the main gate stood alert, their spears catching the faint light of the torches. There was no way through there. So Kobe moved along the side of the wall instead, keeping low, staying in the shadows. That was when he saw it. The tower. Princess Adora's tower. Tall. Isolated. Wrapped in climbing vines that stretched from the ground almost all the way to her balcony. Kobe stopped. He looked up. Then he looked back toward the village. Then up again. If he wanted answers, he had to go where no one else was allowed. He wiped his hands against his clothes, took a breath, and grabbed the first vine. The climb was slow. The stone scraped his skin. The vines shifted under his weight. More than once, his foot slipped, and his heart slammed into his throat. But he kept going. Higher. And higher. Until the ground below began to disappear into darkness. By the time he reached the balcony, his arms burned, and his chest felt like it might burst. He pulled himself over the edge and lay still for a moment, listening. Nothing. Just the soft sound of something unusual. Not wind. Not movement. Something like breathing. But lighter. Thinner. Like air passing through water. Kobe pushed himself up slowly and stepped toward the open doorway. Inside, the room was filled with a faint mist. And at the center of it, sitting on her bed, was Princess Adora. But something about her was wrong. Her skin was changing. Fading. Almost as if the girl who had never been allowed to touch the ground was slowly disappearing anyway. And that was the moment Kobe realized. Whatever secret the king was hiding, it was already starting to break. Kobe stood frozen at the doorway. The room was warm and heavy with mist, but the warmth did not feel comforting. It felt desperate. Bowls of water had been placed all around the chamber. Wet cloths hung from ropes near the ceiling. Servants had likely rushed in and out for hours trying to fill the room with moisture. Yet none of it was enough. Princess Adora sat upright on the edge of her bed, breathing slowly, her hands resting on the blanket before her. Only they did not look like normal hands anymore. The skin along her fingers had turned pale and clear, like thin glass with blue light moving underneath it. When she lifted her face and saw Kobe, she did not scream. "You came back," she said softly. Kobe stepped closer, unable to hide his shock. "What is happening to you?" Adora looked down at her hands. "I think," she said after a moment, "I am drying out." The words sent cold fear through him. Before Kobe could answer, footsteps pounded somewhere down the hall. Voices shouted orders. Metal clanged against stone. The whole palace was awake. "They know you're gone from your room. Kobe asked. No, she said. They know I'm getting worse. She looked at him then, directly. Tell me the truth. All of it. Kobe swallowed. He was only a boy. This was the king's daughter. Yet in that moment, she was not above him, not protected by silk or guards or rules. She was just someone trapped inside a lie. So he told her. He told her about the empty river, the dying crops, the mothers with dry bowls, the guards taking the last water from homes below the hill. He told her about Nola lying weak on the mat. He told her that the people did not hate her. They feared what her life was costing them. Tears filled Adora's eyes. But when they rolled down her cheeks, Kobe stared. They were not ordinary tears. Each drop fell bright and clear, splashing onto the blanket like fresh rain. My father said he was saving everyone, she whispered. Kobe shook his head. He is saving you. At that moment, a voice came from behind them. No. They turned. Old Binta stood in the doorway holding a lantern. Her lined face looked tired beyond words. He believes those are the same thing. Adora rose slowly. Binta, she said. Tell me. The old woman closed the door behind her and stepped inside. I prayed this day would never come, she said. But lies do not stay buried forever. She placed the lantern down and faced the princess. The night you were born, you did not breathe. Adora's face drained of color. The healers failed. The priest failed. Your father carried your tiny body into the forbidden forest and begged the sky spirits for mercy. They gave it, at a price. Kobe felt the room go still. They placed rain magic inside your chest, Binta continued. A living spirit of water. It woke your heart. It made you breathe. It made you live. Adora's hand moved slowly to her chest. And the ground, she whispered. The earth wants back what does not belong to men, Binta said. If your bare feet touch the soil, the magic returns to the land at once. Kobe looked at Adora. Then at the bowls of water. Then everything made terrible sense. The drought, he said quietly. Binta nodded. The sky refuses to rain while its gift is trapped inside palace walls. Adora staggered back and sat heavily on the bed. All this time. Her voice broke. All this time people suffered because of me. No, Kobe said firmly. Because of a choice. That mattered. And she knew it. The doors burst open. King Django stormed inside with guards behind him, robes loose, eyes burning with panic. When he saw Kobe, he pointed instantly. See him. Two guards rushed forward, but Adora stepped between them. Stop. The room shook with the force of her voice. Even the guards hesitated. The king stared at her. Move aside, child. He has poisoned your mind. No, she said. You did. Django's face twisted with grief. I saved you. You caged me. I loved you. You starved them. Each sentence landed like stone. The king took a step closer, his voice cracking now. You were dead in my arms. Do you understand that? Dead. I would burn the whole world before I buried you. For the first time, Kobe saw not a monster. A father. Broken long ago and still breaking. Adora's eyes filled again. I know, she said gently. That is why I forgive you. Then she turned and walked toward the balcony. The king's fear became raw terror. No. He rushed after her. Guards moved. Binta cried out. Kobe could not breathe. Adora stepped onto the balcony stone. Her feet were bare. Below them, the royal garden stretched into dry earth and dead grass. She looked back one last time. At her father. At Kobe. At the kingdom beyond the walls. I was never meant to be kept, she said. Then she climbed over the edge. Adora. King Django lunged, but his hands caught only air. She dropped. For one terrible second, there was silence. Then her feet touched the ground. The world exploded in blue light. A thunderous crack split the night. The palace shook. Windows shattered. Guards fell to their knees. From the place where Adora landed, a towering column of water burst upward like a river reborn. It rose into the sky and struck the clouds. Clouds that had not existed moments earlier. They gathered fast. Dark. Heavy. Furious. Then the rain came. Not a drizzle. Not a gentle shower. A roaring wall of rain that drenched the palace, flooded the courtyard, pounded the roads, and rushed down the hill toward the village. People stumbled from their huts laughing, crying, shouting to the heavens. Children opened their mouths to drink from the sky. Animals lifted their heads. The dead river began to move again. Inside Kobe's hut, Nola woke to cool drops striking her face through the roof thatch. She blinked, smiled weakly, and held out her hands. Kobe stood on the balcony in the downpour, tears mixing with rain. Below, there was no sign of Adora. Only flowers blooming where dry earth had been. King Django collapsed to his knees. The rain soaked his robes, his hair, his face. He did not move. He had saved his daughter once by refusing nature. And lost her forever by trying to keep her. Days later, the kingdom buried nobody. Instead, they planted a great garden in the place where she touched the ground. It became the greenest place in all of Tola. Even in the harshest seasons, flowers opened their first. People said if you stood there during light rain, you could hear a girl laughing. Kobe returned often with Nola. They would stand in the wet grass, barefoot. Always barefoot. King Django changed after that. He opened the well to everyone. He tore down the dungeon gates. He ruled more quietly, as if every command now had to pass through memory first. Some wounds stitched too late. Some love becomes dangerous when it tries to possess what should be free. And some sacrifices do not end a life. They return life to everyone else.
If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more interesting stories like this. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, would you have let her go or tried to hold on?